The last areas of the brain we have are the hindbrain and the midbrain. When it comes to the midbrain, this is all we got. Remember, it's the mesencephalon. The midbrain stays the midbrain. From the very beginnings of when you first form, or when your nervous system first forms to now, this is it. We have some pretty big structures here. The first one is the corpora quadragemia. It contains a couple sets of little hills called superior colliculi and inferior colliculi. When you hear something getting closer to your ear, to your head, the inferior colliculus helps to cause reflexes within the head to duck because you hear it coming at you. You want to protect your head. Superior colliculus or colliculi is visual reflexes, and when something's flying at you, that's why if you're lucky enough to sit behind the behind home plate at a baseball game, you got the net up, ball ain't getting through, but you still move to the side because something's coming at your head. It's instinctual. It's a reflex. We have some peduncles here. They have some various ascending and descending tracks. I don't know if that one's necessarily a huge thing right now, but we have the red nucleus. It's involved with motor coordination. I mentioned it briefly, didn't have it on the slide, but talked about it. It helps to connect the cerebrum and cerebellum. There are a lot of connections there's 3 sets of connections between the cerebellum and everything. Cerebellum and the cerebrum, cerebellum and the midbrain, cerebellum and the pons. And the red nucleus helps to coordinate that information. You take in visual information and you remember, because your cerebellum is involved with motor patterns. So it takes these 2 pieces, these 2 structures, and coordinates that information. I know that if there's a flat floor here, I can extend this leg out and I can move in this direction. I can move back in this direction. So that's what the red nucleus helps to coordinate. Substantia nigra is probably, again, hugely more important. It's involved with those inhibitory neurons, so you can coordinate fine, coordinated muscular control. So of all these dots here, these 3 parts of the midbrain are probably the most important in the grand scheme of things. For the hindbrain, again, we have, or the rhombencephalon, we have the 2 parts, the met and the myelencephalon. If we look at the metencephalon first, who makes it up? Again, the pons and the cerebellum. The pons has a number of sensory and motor tracts that kind of travel through here as they head up and down, head up into the head or head down into the spinal cord. All of the nuclei for the trigeminal nerve, abducens, facial, vestibulocochlear, all of those nerves arise from the pons. I don't have those listed up there. Don't worry about it. What do we have here? What would I love you to know? I would love you to know that it has 2 important respiratory control centers, one called the pneumotaxic and one called the apneustic centers. These affect rate and depth of breathing, respectively. These are things that we'll talk about with the autonomic nervous system when we start talking about lungs and respiration and how we control how fast we breathe and how deep we breathe. And it's based on a number of things, and this will be one of them. The cerebellum has gray matter, has white matter. Gray matter along the outside, white matter on the inside. And again, arbor vitae is the name of the white matter. White matter of the cerebellum has its own name called arbor vitae. Again, it's involved with kind of learned motor patterns. So it receives a lot of information. It works like we talked about earlier with the basal nuclei, but not only is it going to be receiving information from all of those guys in the primary motor cortex and here, but it's also going to receive all the information from all of my proprioceptors in all of my movable joints, my freely movable joints, okay? So it's going to help to influence and coordinate. When you feel the earth shift a little bit, you're going to reflexively widen your base out, bring your head back to equilibrium with the world to allow you to interact with it. So it brings in all these proprioceptors from all these joints along the vertebra, all your freely movable, all your diarthrotic joints, tendons, Golgi tendon organs, muscles, muscle spindle fibers, letting it know that the muscle's contracting. So there's a lot of stuff that has to come into the cerebellum in order to just know how to, walk and move around. The last little man that we have here is the medulla oblongata, the myelencephalon, and it has pyramids. It has those pyramids on the front of it. Those medulla pyramids have some specific nerve tracks in them called pyramidal fibers, and they run up through here. All ascending and descending tracks going up to the brain and down to the spinal cord pass through the medulla oblongata. That's not necessarily the case for everybody above that. Pons, thalamus, yada, yada, yada. So aside from the pyramids with all of these various different spinal tracts going up through it, it also contains some very important nuclei. These are the things that I would like you to know. These are the things that we are going to be looking at later. The medulla oblongata has its own respiratory center as well. So it's going to be working intimately with the pons, with those pneumothoracic and apneustic areas to help control breathing. We also have a nuclei here that helps to control heart, the cardiac center. It's going to go and synapse down on the sinoatrial node and the myocardium of the heart, basically. The vasomotor center, it's going to help control the blood vessel diameters. It's going to help either cause sympathetic effect, and we're going to get constriction, or we're going to have parasympathetic effect, and we're going to have vasodilation. All of that is dictated by that specific nuclei right there. And, you can see kind of some of those centers within the brain, kind of where they're at. That leads us to our last system, I believe. Talked about the limbic system. Now we have the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system, and you see it kind of on this slide right here, the reticular formation. It kind of runs up through and includes a multitude of various different structures. Runs up through the brainstem, goes in there, it can affect various different nuclei and a number of locales. It helps us to stay awake. And whenever there is information coming into the reticular activating system, we stay awake. If there's no stimuli coming in to the reticular activating system, it starts to diminish and turn itself off, for lack of a better word. That is what allows us to sleep. Interesting, every bit of sensory information is running through here, except smell. So this is why you can sleep and the house is burning down all around you. And all that smoke that would cause you to cough to kingdom come, it doesn't wake you. You're not waking it up unless the fire hits you or something lands on you and startles you, okay? So that's why, smoke detectors are so dang loud. That's why alarms are so loud, okay? Because there's no sense of smell going in there to trigger this system to wake up. Again, acetylcholine is usually always stimulatory, right? In most cases, it can be inhibitory, right? With certain types of receptors in the autonomic nervous system. But when we get acetylcholine released, it can act on the areas involved with the reticular activating system to kind of help stimulate other neurotransmitters that actually go wake up. And some of these are very bizarre. So you don't really need to know about them. I mean, it's like norexin, hypocrisy-1. I don't know. There's some crazy ones out there. All right. But it helps to release other polypeptide hormones, other hormones. And it's those hormones that cause the stimulation ultimately of the entire system to cause you to wake up. Again, no stimulation, you sleep. Okay. We have inhibitory hormone, right? If we release this major inhibitory hormone, we start to inhibit the reticular activation system. And this helps us to get into sleep. And drugs help to target these different regions. Caffeine stimulates it, release acetylcholine even more. Benadryl, Ambien, again, helps to inhibit those areas to be activated. Stimulates GABA release. Cause you to be more sleepy, to fall asleep. For some reason, people who have sleep issues, they cannot keep it on the outside. And they can't separate. They can't keep their thoughts from running around at night. And this helps to promote that sleep.